From millions of copies sold in the 90s to now less than 1,000 active players across the whole genre. This is anti-gravity racing, a subgenre that was already on its way out in the mid-2000s, with one of its flagships completely abandoned and the other, well, see for yourself. Look at these amazing graphics in this brand new Wipeout game. Wait, this looks familiar. It's almost as if I've played this already. Yep, every track is carried over from Wipeout Pure and Pulse. The physics are the same as Pulse, with slightly lighter ships. Wipeout games have always had banger soundtracks though, but this one is recycled as well. They made sure this Mickey Mouse House Party song gets stuck in your head forever. Why would anyone who played the last two games buy this? Well, they don't. We're gonna sell this to modern audiences only. So let's add an autopilot setting that steers you away from walls. Yeah, can't have skill issues when the game is gonna play itself. This remaster of Wipeout Pulse was lacking in content, so they came up with an expansion. And inside of it is even more recycled tracks. And there's now advertisements in loading screens. The deathmatch mode has also been recycled, but it now takes damage dealt into account, and the press one button to win weapons have been removed. Except for Quake. How is this still here? There are two new modes though, one of them is gimmicky, but the other takes the zone mode and turns it into a race. It's actually cool. Thankfully, the next time they made a new Wipeout game, it featured wider tracks with more split paths, but the handling has remained nearly the same and feels out of place when combined with a more open track design. Ships now have speed, combat and agility variants, along with one with a unique ability. There's only 5 of them though, so this sounded like a good idea to expand upon, but that never happened. This game was rushed and had little content at release, so they released an expansion that contained the previous game and its expansion. They recycled the game, added a DLC worth of recycled content to it, recycled both of them as a DLC for an unfinished game, and then recycled all of these into one final recycled title. This one improves the engine sounds, offering richer feedback and greater distinction between ships, an aspect that was always overlooked in AGRs. Otherwise, it's basically the same game, and the Wipeout franchise ends with it. Treated like a generic sports game tech demo made to showcase its system's technical abilities and not as an actual game. Even today most people remember Wipeout for its vibes. It's that super fast game with techno soundtrack, not a power-up racer with weighty hovercrafts. The studio was closed down after releasing the final game in 2012, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of them went on to work at Microsoft.
From the ground up.
While the subgenre was long dead, it didn't stop smaller studios and indie devs from trying. Starting with Fatal Inertia, and it's an odd one. It seems simple at first, the driving is basic, and the majority of tracks are circles. It literally feels like the dev drew a circle on a map and threw random objects around it, which might be why some of them were removed in the updated re-release of the game that you're currently watching. The tracks are now more open, but the ships have become grippier? No, you're supposed to do the opposite! The game tries to make up for this in other ways though. There's significantly less auto-balancing here compared to other AGRs, which combined with the bumpy tracks make pitch control especially important. You have to try to stay parallel to the ground as much as possible, or else you'll lose momentum and risk bottoming out. This is further emphasized with a magnet orb weapon that weighs down the ship and throws off its balance. There's also a grapple that clings to surfaces and other racers, in theory. This is a fun game in the rare instances when it works, but ultimately, its lack of polish and questionable decisions bring down its unique concept. It was also infected with the usual graphics chase virus, because an AGR running at 30 FPS is just not acceptable at this point. And so is this level of rubber banding. But here comes a franchise trying to fill F-Zero's gap called Fast Racing League. More like Slow Racing League. The game is separated into 3 speed classes, and much like Wipeout, the first 2 feel more like an extended tutorial. But at least Wipeout didn't reuse the exact same events for every class. The main gimmick is the color switching mechanic. You can only take boost and jump pads that match your ship's color. You switch colors by pressing a button, spinning an energy bar that can be refilled through pickups in the process. That's all, and it doesn't add much to the gameplay. The ships hug the floor outside of jumps, making corners repetitive, with the only variety coming from obstacles and also some unique training missions. The driving is grippy and responsive, but still offers a challenge in the fastest class. A meh game overall, and the final notable AGR of the 7th generation of games. Yep, one unfinished Wipeout game, a graphics showcase, and a subpar wannabe F-Zero. There's an indie game for the Xbox though, but out of all the things, indie 360 games can't be emulated at the moment. We only have 2 basic floor ruggers that aren't even worth covering, and a PlayStation Home minigame that might be revived one day. Sorry. It's gonna be downhill from here, and we'll have to fast forward 4 years to Formula Fusion, the game that tried to revive anti-gravity racing, raising 100k and even bringing back some Wipeout people, which turned out to be a lie. I downloaded the most recent release, which didn't leave a good impression, and long before I could form an opinion, it soft locked after the first few levels. And then it nuked itself. This game spent 5 years in early access, and some people say the old builds are better, so I downloaded the very first one, which had one ship, one track, an incredibly slow camera, and an ESL logo. Someone actually thought they could make esports out of this dead genre. I also tried other releases, but none would work on my machine. Formula Fusion, later renamed to Pacer, was eventually bought by some shady IP hoarding company, and that was the last we heard of it. Next, we have Anti-Gravity meets Sim Racing, a game where you have to engineer your own skimmer. The gameplay revolves around balancing your power between lift and thrust. More thrust gives you more speed, but also increases the risk of collision with the ground. This game also simulates your pilot nearly falling unconscious when experiencing high G-forces. Yeah, the vehicle we've been driving in every AGR so far, they're basically inoperable by humans. That's one huge plot hole you just have to ignore when playing AGRs, which is thankfully not a problem, because who gives shit about lore in racing games? If you do, you're playing the wrong genre. Nothing triggers me more than a racing game review that spends more time talking about the generic, shallow story that most people are gonna ignore anyways, than it does going over the core gameplay. And the worst part? People fall for these nostalgia baits. One reason I don't cover popular games is because I thought people were already fed up watching a billion NFS Carbon videos that all go over the same things. But no! This Carbon video with AI generated scripts will likely outperform most of my AGR videos. And I'm gonna cry about it. Anyways, as much as I complain about modern games being made for disabled toddlers, I'm gonna quit playing the one that goes far into the opposite direction. It's one of those games you have to watch a 2-hour long tutorial before playing. Except in this case, there isn't one. Well, I get what I ask for. Here comes the next installment in the Fast series, with wider tracks, slidey handling, and slow ships. Except this time they ramped up the visual effects. Yay, violent camera shake equals fast. Who cares if the player wants to see where they're going? We made the world rideable, so don't worry about that. The game is shallow and still twice as long as it should be. If you thought they couldn't make it any worse, enter Fast RMX. I couldn't run this one properly, but it's a recycled version of the previous game with more vehicles and tracks. Something that might have worked if the core gameplay was enjoyable. Next up, Redout has some of the slidiest vehicles in all of AGRs, to the point that even its wide speed focused tracks struggle to contain them. I didn't dislike it initially, but then I realized you can bounce off walls and keep most of your momentum. Now you might say, stop being a wall riding sweat and play the game like it's intended to. Well, I tried. I drove properly and braked when I needed to, but I kept losing this event. So I started ignoring brakes and simply used walls to bounce off corners, and I won that first try. This brainless noob tactic is what makes up the top times in Redout and Neo. You call that fun and challenging? If these were shovelware games, that would be understandable, but they are two of the three main AGR franchises today. These modern games in general are disappointing to the point that I feel like it's not worth going into detail. There are people who defend garbage like these saying it's fun, and my response is, quit having fun! Go try out older games and start having more fun! Of course you'll like shits like these when all you've been playing are modern slops that do nothing but lower your standards and expectations. You could spend $60 on a game or spend 60 minutes setting up emulators and installing patches for multiple free games. What's the worst that could happen? We'll cover Redout's much improved sequel later, but some people say the first one is better. They mainly prefer Redout 1's music, sense of speed, and the more visually appealing tracks, but gameplay, where? Alright, next, SmuggleCraft tries to mix RPG with racing. You can certainly feel the effort and Kickstarter money that went into this one, which resulted in 10 total reviews. Well, I didn't have a good start story-wise. I had to restart my first run because accidentally pressing a button made every mission nearly impossible. Avoiding that misclick on my second run made me cruise through every level until the end. Turning along with strafing equals giga cornering, making the handling too easy. The procedurally generated levels are just a random combination of set objects that even you can put together in the track creator and share it with the 4 people who bothered to try it. And now 5. But at least the servers are still up after all these years, which is more than it can be said for PolyRace. 90% of this game is now unplayable since most of its content relies on servers, not even the HUD loads properly. The dev was nice to open source a game, but not enough to share the server files as well. Not that it would have made a difference anyways. What can make a difference and put a stop to this is the Europeans watching this video going to stopkillinggames.com and taking 5 minutes to sign a petition. We still need over 1 million signatures because who knows how many of those are botted. Next up, of course someone had to make an AGR in Roblox, and here's how the gameplay works. You hold W. Now all it needs is some noob tubes and boom, you have the next Mario Kart. Next, a time attack game where you can fly and stick to any surface, but the vehicle is so slow, it feels more like trying to connect 2 dots as smoothly as possible. Finding the shortest path is a bigger challenge at this point. I also found some itch.io games that, as expected, played like unfinished school projects. Even this one where its developer asked me to try, like, it's a donut, man, what do you want me to do with it? There was also an arena combat game that is not only dead, but constantly crashes. I'm sure someone watching this video is gonna ask, but what else do you want from Wipeout or AGRs? Thankfully, there is a game that answers exactly that. So keep an eye out for the next episode that covers the best and also the worst AGRs in the modern era. If it's released, you can find it on the screen or in the description.